The morning sun cast long shadows across Nova Haven's crystalline buildings as Jin Hayashi finished his maintenance rounds at the colony's atmospheric processing plant. A seasoned engineer with weathered hands and keen eyes, Jin had chosen this peaceful outpost specifically for its reputation as a center of scientific advancement and interspecies cooperation. The colony, home to humans and a dozen alien species, had flourished under the protection of the Galactic Concordat's non-aggression treaties. That protection proved worthless when the Kraxan warships appeared. They came without warning, their massive vessels breaking through the cloud cover like obsidian daggers. The Kraxan Empire, notorious for their belief in evolutionary cleansing, had decided that Nova Haven's multicultural success was an affront to their vision of genetic purity. Their attack began not with bombs, but with a biological agent that turned the colony's advanced air purification system into a delivery mechanism for their weapons. Jin recognized the danger the moment the atmospheric readings began to fluctuate. His decades of experience told him this was no malfunction. Racing through the facility's corridors, he initiated emergency protocols, sealing off crucial sections and rerouting air supply to the colony's underground shelters. But he knew it wouldn't be enough. Through the facility's windows, he watched in horror as Kraxan drop ships descended, their hulls gleaming with a predatory sheen. Warriors in biomechanical armor stormed through the streets, their weapons designed not to kill quickly, but to cause maximum suffering. The Kraxan believed that pain revealed the true worth of a species. In the central control room, Jin worked frantically to establish a quantum communications link, while his colleague, Dr. Rama Patel, coordinated with the medical teams. They had trained for emergencies, but nothing like this. The Kraxan's reputation for sadistic efficiency was well-earned, and their attacks were specifically designed to sow chaos and prevent organized resistance. Jin, they're targeting the medical centers first, Rama's voice cracked as she watched the security feeds. They're separating people by species. The ones they consider genetically inferior are being. Keep working, Jin cut her off, his fingers flying over the console. He couldn't let himself think about what was happening outside. Not now. Their only hope lay in reaching Earth's rapid response fleet. The quantum communicator was designed to penetrate any blockade, but it required precise calibration that usually took hours. They had minutes. A massive explosion rocked the facility, sending cascades of sparks through the control room. Through the chaos, Jin spotted movement in the corridor, the distinctive silhouette of Kraxan armor. They had breached the building. Rama, get to the secure vault, Jin ordered, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. Upload everything, every scan, every recording. Earth needs to know exactly what happened here. What about you? Rama's dark eyes were wide with concern. Someone has to finish the calibration. Jin's hands never stopped moving across the controls. And someone has to make sure they don't find you before the upload is complete. The sound of energy weapons grew closer. Rama hesitated for a moment, then squeezed Jin's shoulder before disappearing through the hidden access panel behind the main computer core. Jin allowed himself a small smile. Her brilliant mind would be needed in the aftermath, assuming there was one. The quantum communicator was at 93% calibration when the first Kraxan warrior burst through the door. Jin didn't turn around. He kept working, even as he felt the barrel of a weapon press against his spine. The warrior spoke in the harsh, clicking language of their kind, demanding immediate surrender. 95%. A second warrior entered, then a third. They were taking their time, confident in their victory. Jin could smell the acrid scent of their armor's chemical enhancers, designed to increase their natural aggression. 98%. Your species' weakness disgusts us. The lead warrior switched to Galactic Standard, wanting Jin to understand his contempt. You will watch as we purify this colony of its corruption. 100%. Jin's fingers pressed the final sequence just as the warrior pulled his trigger. The quantum pulse shot out faster than light itself, carrying with it everything: the attack, the atrocities, the faces of the perpetrators. And most importantly, it carried a message that Jin had typed with his last keystrokes. They believe we are weak because we choose peace. Show them why we make that choice. The message reached Earth's quantum receivers within seconds. In the underground command center beneath the Himalayas, Strategic Command came alive with activity. Alarms blared through every military installation across the solar system. On the dark side of Mars, dormant shipyards awakened. And in her office in Geneva, Fleet Admiral Indira Kalani watched the footage from Nova Haven with cold fury in her eyes. "Send the order," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's response. "All ships, all stations, Protocol Omega is now in effect." Across human space, men and women who had trained for years hopping this day would never come began to move with terrible purpose. Humanity had learned from its history, peace was preferable, peace was the goal, but peace was only possible when those who would shatter it understood the consequences. The Kraxan Empire had believed they were attacking the weak. They were about to learn why humanity's reputation for mercy was matched only by its capacity for righteous retribution. Earth's response would be neither hasty nor cruel. It would be precise, overwhelming, and absolutely unstoppable. And it began with a single word, transmitted to every human ship and station: begin. Beneath the ancient rock of the Himalayas, Fleet Admiral Indira Kalani stood in Earth's Strategic Command Center, her face illuminated by the holographic display of Nova Haven's destruction. The room hummed with controlled chaos as military personnel coordinated humanity's response across a dozen star systems. But it was the silence that spoke volumes, the calculated, deadly silence of a species that had learned to channel its rage into precision. 2 kilometers below the command center, in a facility whose existence was known to fewer than 50 humans, Lieutenant Marcus Wung supervised the activation of Project Thunderbolt. The massive quantum computing arrays that lined the walls pulsed with cold blue light as they processed combat simulations at speeds that bordered on precognition. Marcus had spent 5 years helping develop these systems, hoping they would never be needed. "Status report," Kalani's voice came through his secured channel. Marcus studied the streams of data flowing across his screens. "Project Thunderbolt is at 70% capacity, Admiral. The quantum predictive matrices are already mapping every possible Kraxan response to our first strike. Time to full deployment. 4 hours, 17 minutes. Marcus paused, then added, "Admiral, the simulations are showing something interesting. The Kraxans' attack pattern at Nova Haven, it wasn't just about genetic purification. They're testing us." In her command center, Kalani's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Their approach was too methodical. They wanted us to see everything. The biological weapons, the segregation, the torture. They're trying to provoke an emotional response, expecting us to retaliate blindly." Marcus sent a data packet to her display. "They think they understand human psychology. They don't." Kalani allowed herself a grim smile. The Kraxan, like many species, had misinterpreted humanity's preference for peace as a sign of weakness. They didn't understand that humans had perfected war long before reaching the stars, and had chosen to set it aside precisely because they knew its true cost. Across the solar system, humanity's war machine awakened with terrible efficiency. In the shipyards of Mars, Captain Dante Rivera watched as his stealth destroyer, the Night's Whisper, received its final upgrades. The ship's quantum-shifted hull plates would make it virtually invisible to Kraxan sensors, while its newly installed graviton lance could slice through their strongest shields like paper. "Engineering reports all systems green," his XO, Lieutenant Kira Yashida, reported. "Crew is at battle stations. We're ready to move on your order." Rivera nodded, his dark eyes fixed on the massive fleet assembling in Mars orbit. Dozens of ships, from nimble corvettes to massive dreadnoughts, each representing humanity's response to a different type of threat. Some, like his own vessel, were designed for surgical strikes. Others carried enough firepower to reduce planets to ash, though that was a line humanity had sworn never to cross again. In lunar orbit, Director Helena Volkov oversaw the activation of Earth's quantum defense grid. The network of satellites and stations had been disguised as research outposts and communications relays, their true purpose hidden even from most of Earth's allies. As she worked, Her thoughts kept returning to the footage from Nova Haven, to the faces of the innocent victims of Kraxan cruelty. "Director," one of her technicians called out, "we're detecting unusual activity in the Kraxan communication networks. They're celebrating, broadcasting footage of the attack across their territories." Volkov's expression didn't change, but her voice carried an edge sharper than steel. "Record everything. Every transmission, every boast, every face. They wanted us to see their work. Let's make sure we remember exactly who ordered this atrocity." Back in the Himalayan Command Center, Admiral Kalani received the final confirmation she had been waiting for. Project Thunderbolt was fully operational, its quantum computers having mapped out every possible path to victory. The simulations showed multiple routes to success, but all of them required something the Kraxan would never expect: patience. "All command staff acknowledge tactical directive," she broadcast across the encrypted channels. "This is not a revenge mission. This is not a punitive strike. This is surgery, and we are the surgeons. We will cut out this cancer from the galaxy with precision, with purpose, and with the full understanding that our response will set a precedent for centuries to come." In orbit above Europa, Commander Yuki Tanaka prepared her squadron of quantum interceptors for deployment. The ships, barely larger than ancient fighter jets, carried weaponry that could rewrite the laws of physics on a local scale. They represented humanity's philosophy of warfare perfectly: small, precise, and devastating when necessary. "Squadron leaders acknowledge readiness," she ordered, her calm voice belying the fierce determination in her heart. One by one, the other commanders reported in. They were ready. They were all ready. The Kraxan Empire had expected a swift, emotional response, fleets of human warships charging blindly into battle, driven by rage and seeking revenge. Instead, they encountered silence. No diplomatic protests, no threats, no movement of ships near their borders. Just silence, spreading across human space like a blanket of snow before an avalanche. In their arrogance, the Kraxan missed the significance of that silence. They didn't notice the quantum distortions that signaled the activation of humanity's hidden defense networks. They didn't detect the stealth ships moving into position around their key military installations. And most importantly, they didn't understand that humanity's greatest weapon had always been its patience, its ability to channel emotion into strategy, fury into focus. As the final pieces fell into place, Admiral Kalani stood before the holographic display of known space, studying the intricate dance of planets, ships, and quantum probability fields that Project Thunderbolt had calculated. Everything was ready. Humanity would demonstrate to the galaxy why its mercy should be valued and its wrath feared. "All commands," she broadcast, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's response. "Operation Silent Thunder is now active. Phase 1 begins in 5 hours. Remember Nova Haven. Remember precision. Remember why we fight." Across human space, men and women who had trained for this moment acknowledged her orders with quiet determination. The time for talk had passed. The time for action had come. And in the silence of space, humanity's response took shape, not with a roar, but with the deadly quiet of an approaching storm. Operation Silent Thunder began not with the thunderous roar of warships or the flash of energy weapons, but with a whisper. Deep within Kraxan space, quantum distortions rippled through their defense networks as human stealth ships emerged from their carefully planned positions. Captain Dante Rivera's Night's Whisper led the vanguard, its advanced hull absorbing all sensor sweeps like darkness swallowing light. In the ship's Combat Information Center, Tactical Officer Nadia Patel monitored the Kraxan's orbital defense platforms. The alien empire had built their military infrastructure on the assumption that any attack would come from outside their territory. They never considered the possibility that their enemies might already be among them, waiting in perfect silence. "All ships in position," Nadia reported, her voice barely above a whisper despite the soundproof command deck. "Quantum synchronization at 100%. The Kraxans still haven't detected our presence." Rivera nodded, his expression set in stone. "Begin Phase 1, authorization code Thunder Alpha 7. Across 50 star systems, human stealth ships activated their quantum disruptors simultaneously. The carefully coordinated attack didn't target the Kraxans' weapons or ships. Instead, it struck at something far more vital: their ability to communicate. In an instant, every quantum relay, every faster-than-light communications node, every command and control center went dark. The Kraxan Empire, which had prided itself on its military superiority, suddenly found itself fragmented into isolated pockets. Each system, each fleet, each military installation became an island, cut off from central command and unable to coordinate their responses. From her command post in the Himalayan facility, Admiral Kalani watched the tactical display as thousands of red dots representing Kraxan communication nodes winked out simultaneously. "Phase 1 complete," she announced across the encrypted human channels. "Begin Phase 2. Commander Yuki Tanaka's quantum interceptors launched from their hidden positions, streaking through space like silver needles. Their targets were not the Kraxan's mighty warships, but their sensor arrays and early warning systems. Using technology that bent light itself, the interceptors could approach within meters of Kraxan vessels without being detected. "Remember," Tanaka transmitted to her pilots, "precision over power. We're not here to destroy, we're here to blind." The quantum interceptors struck with surgical accuracy, their exotic weapons shorting out sensor arrays and scrambling targeting systems. Kraxan warships, suddenly stripped of their ability to detect threats beyond visual range, began firing blindly into space, their shots passing harmlessly through regions where their sensors falsely indicated human ships might be. In orbit around the Kraxan throne world of Kraxar, the massive dreadnought Imperial Fist received garbled reports of communications failures across the Empire. Its commander, Supreme War Leader Vexther, refused to believe that anyone could penetrate so deeply into their territory without detection. His mandibles clicked in agitation as he ordered his fleet to maintain standard patrol patterns. That's when Phase 3 began. Director Helena Volkov, coordinating from Lunar Command, activated the quantum virus that human intelligence had spent years planting in Kraxan military networks. Unlike crude computer warfare, this weapon operated on the quantum level, using the principles of entanglement to rewrite the Empire's military protocols in real time. Across Kraxan space, their fearsome warships received new orders, apparently from high command, directing them to defensive positions against a phantom invasion force approaching from the opposite direction of the actual human fleet. The beauty of the deception lay in its subtlety. The ships weren't disabled or destroyed, merely redirected. "Phase 3 successful," Volkov reported. 87% of Kraxan heavy units have been redirected. Their fleet is now effectively divided into isolated battle groups, each responding to different false threats. Admiral Kalani's voice carried across the command channel. "Execute Phase 4. This was the moment Captain Rivera had been waiting for. The Knight's Whisper and its sister ships decloaked simultaneously, revealing themselves to the now isolated Kraxan command stations. But instead of opening fire, they transmitted a single message, the full recording of the Nova Haven massacre, along with a simple statement in the Kraxan language. "You believed us weak because we chose peace. Now understand why we made that choice." The message was followed by the activation of quantum beacons that revealed the true extent of humanity's infiltration. Kraxan commanders watched in horror as stealth ships appeared throughout their territory, their weapons locked on critical military installations. They had been surrounded all along, their every move predicted and countered before they made it. Supreme War Leader Vexther, watching his empire's military infrastructure become exposed like a nerve network under a surgeon's scalpel, finally understood the true nature of humanity's response. This was not the blind rage they had expected. This was not even warfare as they understood it. This was something else, a demonstration of such overwhelming strategic and technological superiority that it rendered traditional combat obsolete. In the Himalayan Command Center, Admiral Kalani received the first desperate transmissions from Kraxan leadership requesting immediate cessation of hostilities. She allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction before responding. "This is Fleet Admiral Indira Kalani of Earth Strategic Command. You will immediately surrender all forces involved in the Nova Haven massacre. You will submit to independent investigation of your biological weapons programs. You will provide full reparations to the survivors and their families. These terms are non-negotiable. She paused, then added, "You have 1 hour to comply. If you refuse, or if a single additional civilian dies by Kraxan hands, we will proceed to Phase 5. Unlike what you have witnessed today, Phase 5 is not designed to preserve life." Across human space, warships maintained their positions with quiet determination. They had demonstrated humanity's capability for precise, overwhelming force. Now they waited to see if the Kraxan had the wisdom to understand the message they had been sent. That humanity's restraint was not a weakness to be exploited, but a choice that should inspire profound gratitude and fear. The hour given to the Kraxan Empire passed in tense silence. Throughout their territory, human stealth ships maintained their positions, weapons primed but unfired. In the Himalayan Command Center, Admiral Kalani watched the quantum display as scattered groups of Kraxan vessels attempted to re-establish their communication networks, like a nervous system trying to reconnect its severed parts. Lieutenant Marcus Wung's voice cut through the quiet. "Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from multiple Kraxan installations. They're powering down their weapon systems." Before Kalani could respond, a transmission cut through the encrypted channels. On the main display, Supreme War Leader Vexther's face appeared, his mandibles twitching with barely contained rage and fear. "We accept your terms, humans." But not all Kraxan commanders shared their leader's decision. Deep in the Carina sector, Battle Master Krevtel of the dreadnought Glory of Purity refused to accept defeat. His ship, one of the few that had avoided the quantum virus, launched a desperate attack against what he thought was an exposed human position. Captain Rivera, watching from the Night's Whisper, spoke quietly into his comm. "Battle Master Krevtel, look above you." As the Kraxan commander's sensors finally detected the 3 human stealth destroyers positioned directly above his vessel, his mandibles went still. The destroyers had been there the entire time, weapons locked but unfired, demonstrating a level of tactical superiority that made his attack look like a child's tantrum. "Your empire has surrendered," Rivera continued, his voice carrying neither mockery nor threat, just simple truth. "Don't make us demonstrate why they made that choice." In lunar orbit, Director Volkov received the first detailed scans of Nova Haven's ruins. The quantum sensors revealed something that made her blood run cold, evidence that the Kraxan attack had been merely a test run for a much larger campaign of genetic purification. Hidden in their military databases were plans for simultaneous attacks on dozens of multicultural colonies. "Admiral," she transmitted to Kalani, "you need to see this." As the information spread through Earth's command structure, a new tension filled the air. They had stopped one atrocity, but the evidence suggested the Kraxans' ideology ran deep. How could they ensure this would never happen again? The question weighed heavily on every commander's mind. Commander Yuki Tanaka, leading her quantum interceptors in a patrol pattern around a surrendered Kraxan fleet, caught sight of something that made her pause. Among the Kraxan ships were vessels marked with medical insignia, their equivalent of hospital ships, filled not with warriors but with civilians who had been prepared to treat the casualties of their planned genocide. "This is Commander Tanaka," she transmitted to Strategic Command. "Request permission to deploy medical teams to the Kraxan hospital ships. Many of their medical personnel appear to be civilians who may not share their military's ideology." Admiral Kalani considered the request. This was the delicate moment, the point where humanity's response could either reinforce their moral authority or descend into the same brutality they had opposed. "Permission granted, Commander. Show them the difference between their way and ours." Across Kraxan space, human ships began transmitting a new message, not threats or demands, but offers of medical assistance and humanitarian aid to any Kraxan civilians caught in the military shutdown. It was a calculated move, but one born from genuine human principles. They would not punish an entire species for the crimes of its leaders. In the Himalayan Command Center, Lieutenant Wung's quantum computers continued processing tactical data, but now with a different focus, identifying Kraxan civilians who had opposed their empire's genocidal policies, mapping networks of resistance and cooperation that could be strengthened in the aftermath. "Admiral," he reported, "we're detecting encrypted transmissions from within Kraxan territory. It appears there are significant portions of their population who have been waiting for an opportunity to challenge their military leadership's control." Kalani nodded slowly. This was the true victory they needed, not just the defeat of an enemy's military capability, but the transformation of their society from within. "Begin Phase 6, she ordered. "Selective communication restoration. Let's make sure those voices can finally be heard." Captain Rivera, watching from his command deck as human medical ships approached the Kraxan vessels, felt a complex mix of emotions. They had won a victory without massive bloodshed, demonstrated power without giving in to vengeance. But the harder task lay ahead, ensuring that this moment led to lasting change rather than festering resentment. "Captain," his XO reported, "we're receiving requests from multiple Kraxan commanders. They want to know how we did it. How we achieved this level of technological and tactical superiority without them detecting our preparations." Rivera smiled slightly. "Tell them the truth. Tell them we achieved it precisely because we didn't want to use it. That every advancement, every weapon, every tactic was developed with the hope it would never be needed. That's the lesson they need to learn. True strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to avoid destruction when possible." As the day drew to a close, Admiral Kalani stood before her command staff. The immediate crisis had been resolved, but the real work was just beginning. "Today, we showed the galaxy something important," she said. "Not just our military capability, but our character. We struck with precision instead of rage, offered healing alongside justice, and demonstrated that true power lies in knowing when not to use it." The quantum displays showed the status of the Kraxan surrender, the beginning of humanitarian operations, and the first steps toward a new galactic order. Humanity had proven itself not just powerful, but wise, a species to be respected not for its capacity for destruction, but for its commitment to justice tempered by mercy. Yet in the back of every commander's mind was the knowledge that they had revealed only a fraction of their true capabilities. The message was clear to any who would threaten peace in the future. Humanity's restraint was a choice, and those who mistook it for weakness did so at their own peril. 3 months after humanity's decisive response to the Nova Haven massacre, the galaxy had changed in ways few could have predicted. The Kraxan Empire, once a symbol of militant genetic purism, was transforming under the watchful eyes of human peacekeepers and its own reformed leadership. Admiral Kalani stood aboard the observation deck of the newly constructed Nova Haven Memorial Station, watching as ships from dozens of species arrived for the upcoming Galactic Concordat Summit. The station, built over the ruins of the attacked colony, served as both a monument to those lost and a beacon of hope for the future. "Latest intelligence report, Admiral." Lieutenant Wang appeared at her side, quantum tablet in hand. "The Kraxan reformist movement has gained control of 80% of their military installations. Their new governing council is scheduled to arrive within the hour." Kalani nodded, noting how Wang's demeanor had changed over the past months. Like many who had participated in Operation Silent Thunder, he carried himself with a quiet confidence that came not from the victory itself, but from how it had been achieved. In the station's diplomatic wing, Captain Rivera supervised final security preparations for the summit. The Knight's Whisper and its sister ships maintained a protective grid around the station, their presence now a symbol of vigilance rather than threat. "Captain," his XO called out, "the Kraxan delegation is approaching. You'll want to see this." On the main display, a Kraxan diplomatic vessel appeared. But unlike the Stark warships of their past, this one bore new markings, symbols of peace and cooperation written in multiple galactic languages. More striking were the visible modifications to allow other species to board safely, a physical representation of their changing ideology. Commander Tanaka's quantum interceptors escorted the Kraxan ship to its docking position. Over the past months, her squadron had transitioned from combat operations to humanitarian missions, helping establish new communication channels between reformed Kraxan worlds and their neighbors. "Docking complete," she reported. "You should meet our primary contact, Admiral. She's not what anyone expected." The Kraxan delegation emerged from their ship, led not by a military commander, but by Chief Healer Vexara, Supreme War Leader Vexther's own daughter. She had been one of the civilian medical officers who had opposed her father's genocidal policies from within, and now she stood as a symbol of her species' potential for change. "Welcome to Nova Haven Memorial Station," Admiral Kalani greeted her formally. Vexara's mandibles moved in what humans had learned was a gesture of deep respect. "We come seeking not just peace," she responded, "but understanding. My father believed strength came from genetic purity. You showed us it comes from diversity, from the wisdom to choose restraint over revenge." In the station's medical bay, Director Volkov oversaw the final preparations for another important arrival. The quantum networks she had helped create now served a different purpose, coordinating the largest rehabilitation and reconciliation program in galactic history. "They're ready," she transmitted to Admiral Kalani. The station's main gathering hall filled with representatives from across the galaxy. They had come not just to witness the signing of new treaties, but to learn from humanity's example. On the central platform, Admiral Kalani stood beside Vexara as the main doors opened. A group of survivors from Nova Haven entered, led by Rama Patel. She had survived thanks to Jin Hayashi's sacrifice, and now she represented both the tragedy of the past and the possibility of the future. Behind her came others, humans, aliens, and even reformed Kraxan, all working together to build something new from the ashes of conflict. "Today," Admiral Kalani addressed the assembly, "we gather not to celebrate a victory, but to mark a beginning. 3 months ago, humanity demonstrated its power not through destruction, but through precision, not through vengeance, but through justice, and most importantly, not through hatred, but through the determined protection of all sentient life." She gestured to the diverse crowd before her. "Look around you. Every species here has known war. Every civilization has faced the temptation to believe that might makes right, that difference means danger. Today, we choose a different path." Vexara stepped forward. "The Kraxan Empire exists no more. In its place, we establish the Kraxan Cooperative, dedicated to healing the wounds we inflicted and ensuring such atrocities never happen again. We learned, through humanity's example, that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to change." As the formal proceedings began, Captain Rivera stood with his crew, watching history unfold. "You know," he said quietly to his XO, "some of the younger officers ask why we revealed so much of our technological capabilities during Operation Silent Thunder. They think we should have kept more in reserve." His XO smiled. "And what do you tell them?" "I tell them that the operation's true success wasn't in showing our strength," Rivera replied. "It was in showing our restraint. We proved that humanity's greatest power isn't in our weapons or our technology. It's in our ability to choose wisdom over wrath, mercy over vengeance." In orbit above the station, Commander Tanaka's quantum interceptors performed a ceremonial flyby. Their formation spelled out words in multiple languages: peace through understanding. As the day drew to a close, Admiral Kalani found herself back on the observation deck, watching the stars. Lieutenant Wang joined her, carrying fresh intelligence reports that would likely never need to be acted upon. "Do you think they finally understand, Admiral?" he asked. "Not just the Kraxan, but all of them." Kalani considered the question, watching as ships from former enemy species conducted joint exercises, their crews learning to work together. "They understand what matters most," she replied. "That humanity's choice for peace isn't born from weakness, but from strength. That our restraint isn't a limitation, but a power greater than any weapon." She turned to face the gathered ships, their lights creating a tapestry of cooperation against the darkness of space. "And most importantly, they understand that we will always be here, watching, ready to defend those who cannot defend themselves. Not because we seek power, but because we understand its true purpose." As night fell on the new Nova Haven Memorial Station, the galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in its ability to wage war, but in its determination to forge peace. Not in its capacity for destruction, but in its commitment to protection. And in that understanding, a new era of galactic cooperation began, built not on fear, but on the profound respect that comes from witnessing true strength guided by wisdom.